Welcome to Discovery Watch with John Kaiser.
I'm your host, Jim Goddard. John, welcome back to the show.
Jim, pleasure to be back on the show.
John, Endurance Gold published results for its Reliance Gold project. Are they starting to understand what they have on their hands?
Jim, they released 3 of 16 short RC holes that they drilled in November last year for the Reliance projects, and the results are excellent. 12 meters of 6 gram, almost 17 meters of 7 gram, and almost 14 meters of 6 grams. But what's really important about this is the change in their thinking about the dip of the structure that they had mapped that surface in the Eagle Zone. Now, just to backtrack a bit, this project Reliance has its origins in the 1980s when Charlie Boitard had it through his little junior called Manica, and he was a bit of a maverick who used a dowsing method for deciding where to drill holes, essentially putting his hand on a compass over a paper map somewhere spread on a table, and when it binged within his brain, that's where he would put the drill. But he had managed in the late 80s to post some excellent holes in what was known as the Royal Shear. And this is a 4-kilometer long stretch of sheared rock in the Braylorne district east of the 4.2 million ounce high grade Braylorne Pioneer vein set. A bit to the west, it runs all the way from Carpenter Lake southwards up the mountain until it disappears under the batholith rocks that are in that area. But the drilling that the little junior under Boitard did in those past decades, it didn't seem to have much rhyme or reason, and they attempted a small resource estimate, but they could never make this thing hang together properly. And eventually Charlie Boitard passed away and the claims lapsed. Somebody else staked them, and Robert Boyd, CEO of Endurance, who back in the 80s had been an exploration VP for Homestake and had looked at this but had not made a deal because Charlie Boitard wanted to stay in control of this program and run it according to his exploration strategy. When he saw this, he jumped on it and did a 100% option deal for Endurance in late 2019. And they wanted to get a lot more done last year than they did, but the British Columbia permitting system got so bogged down in its COVID protocols that they didn't really get any drill permits until late October. So they decided that they were going to do a shallow RC drill program to test the very oxidized near-surface portion of this system, both in the Imperial Zone area where Charlie drilled all his holes, and in the new Eagle Zone area where they spent much of the summer doing channel sampling and mapping and coming to the conclusion that, this is an excellent place for this gold mineralization. And this is orogenic style mineralization. It tends to have deep roots. In the case here, there is an antimony overprint, which indicates that it's higher up in the system than the Braylorne Pioneer system. It's definitely different. The Braylorne is this 4.5 kilometer long corridor, about 500 meters wide, in which there are 30 vein sets that are very high grade. The average grade of those 4.2 million ounces that they mined out to over 1,000 meter depth was almost 18 grams per ton. And Talisker Resources has picked up that project, raised an awful lot of money, and is now doing a deep drilling from underground to extend the system to show that the high grade mineralization plunges deeper. But what we have at the Reliance project would be higher up in the system, and it's not as big as the Braylorne system. It does have a 4-kilometer strike along this shear zone, and the possible bounding structure, what they call the treasure linear, it's parallel. It's to the northeast. It's maybe 250 meters to the northeast. So it doesn't have the same sort of footprint as Braylorne itself. But then Braylorne was world class, and you're in a district where world-class gold deposits formed. And the target here is something in the 1 to 2 million ounce range. I would hope in the grade of 5 to 15 grams per ton underground mineable. And what they learned from this initial drill program was that the dip of the mineralized system is shallower than they thought. Based on what they were able to reconstruct from the old core logs from the Imperial zone, it was a steeply dipping system, but here it's 35 degrees dipping to the southwest. And if you go, 100 meters or so farther west, you end up what they call a thrust fault, which is these siltstone chert rocks that have been pushed from the southwest in the northeast direction over top this host rock, which consists of a package of volcanics and argillites and other cherts, which appear to have been tilted on their side a long time ago and penetrated by various feldspar porphyry dikes. And those themselves, they were there or formed during the main mineralizing event, but they do not have the sort of gold mineralization that the rest of the rocks in that area have. But what the story here is that this shear structure was also in extensional setting where these dilation zones opened up and caused brecciation, and the fluids came up and found these areas and deposited both arsenopyrite and gold into it. So these grade golds that they got, it appears to be a 10 to 15 meter true width thickness. It dips to the west. And if you do your sort of back of the napkin type calculations, the Eagle Zone itself has a tonnage footprint of about 1 million tons, depending what the average grade ends up being. That could be, 600,000 ounces, or it could be, backtrack on that. The 1 million tons of it runs like 5 grams. They believe there's potential for 4 or 5 such packages, such tonnage footprints, dilation zones with brecciation and so on within this entire Royal Shear. And what was exciting about the news release yesterday was that they now begin, they believe they now start to understand the controls of this system. And the fact that this dips westward, likely underneath this thrust fault to the west, means that there's plenty of down plunge running room along the entire Royal Shear. Now, in early January, they put out a press release showing the XRF readings for arsenic in the RC chips that they had pulled from the RC holes, and they had the suspicion that the arsenic correlates well with the gold. And they definitely hoped that this was correct because they have been using biogenic sampling of Douglas fir needles in an effort to do property-wide assessment of where the arsenic is present. And of course, where they get the arsenic kicks, they hope they'll eventually also find gold. Most of the property is blanketed by this tuff ash from a volcanic eruption only a couple 100,000 years ago. So it makes soil sampling pretty difficult in this area. You have to get quite deep to get a meaningful sample. Well, the assay results, in addition to revealing this reinterpretation of the dip of the mineralized structure, also showed a very strong correlation between gold grade and the arsenic. And they have these other 13 holes left. Several of them look like they may have missed the mineralized target. There's 6 in the Imperial Zone that they have not yet assayed. But the other ones in the Eagle Zone, if what we saw for gold grades for these 3 holes just reported and the correlation with the arsenic grades, I expect the rest of the results to produce similar gold grades, confirming that here we have the beginning of a target. As soon as they can get back in there late March or early April, assuming that they do an additional financing, they will go in their core drilling. They can start immediately in the Eagle Zone. They now believe that with the gold sulfide correlation confirmed, that IP surveys along the Royal Shear all the way to the southeastern end of the property is justified to help highlight where the sulfides are located. And it's not a simple vein system where you just sort of track the vein system. It's a series of these, what they call ductile, brittle, extensional zones, where the fluid flow came through and found these nice, thick packages to drop the gold and arsenic out. Ultimately, there will probably be a refractory problem here, but with the high grades that they are getting, that is not likely to be a problem and isn't something to worry about right now. So this company currently has about a $22 million implied value. It's waking up. Now that we can sort of see what is the exploration model, the depositional model for it, we can see how all that sort of head-banging type activity in the 80s and 90s by the previous operators, which just couldn't make it hang together, now bringing a very systematic modern exploration approach to this play. This is going to enable this property, which should have been either made or broken back in the 80s and 90s. It will now have a chance to show whether or not it has a couple million ounces present in, 4 or 5 similar Eagle-type zones. Imperial could end up being similar, and the Eagle also, and so there's maybe several more. Plus, chasing it down plunge in the southwest direction, 35-degree dip means you're not going to have to keep drilling ever deeper, expensive holes to chase the zone, this orogenic zone deeper. So a big boost for Endurance Gold through this news release, which I think is going to attract a lot of eyeballs. I've now elevated from simply target testing to discovery delineation stage, which means that if you're looking at, 1 to 2 million ounce system that has a $500 million ultimate project value, this represents excellent, or at least fair speculative value using a $500 million outcome as your target. And we have a competent group in place to take this thing through the proper exploration cycle in the rest of 2021.
We'll have more with John Kaiser right after this.
Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlin, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
Value from success, growth in discovery. Golden Arrow Resources is a well-funded gold-copper exploration company with proven management and prospective properties in Chile, Argentina, and Paraguay. Golden Arrow trades on the Toronto Venture Exchange, symbol GRG, on Frankfurt, symbol G6A, and the OTCQB, symbol GARWF. For more information, visit us at goldenarrowresources.com or call Sean at 778-686-0135.
Welcome back. We're speaking with John Kaiser. John, what did Azimuth Exploration accomplish at its Piqua Copper Project in the James Bay region?
Jim, that is a really good question. It has been 4 months since Azimuth announced on October 6th that it had started a minimum 2,000-meter, 12-hole program on the eastern half of its 20-kilometer copperfield trend on its Piqua project, which SOQUEM now owns 100%, but in which Azimuth can earn back 50%. Now, Piqua became a Discovery Watch story 2 years ago when Midland was exploring the Mithril project, which emerged quite by accident from regional exploration and this possibility that the James Bay region might have high-grade copper system in it. It caught the market's imagination at the time. We thought we might have the beginning of a James Bay area play, but by the time Midland finished drilling its Mithril system, following all its IP anomalies, it turned out that the copper mineralization appeared to be restricted to contact margins between different rock groups, and while those could be high grade itself, by the time you average them into a bulk tonnage scenario, it was way too low grade to be of interesting, and Midland seems to have pretty much stopped talking about the mithril side. But Azimuth's Jean-Marc Loulan, he believed that maybe the center of gravity for this very lengthy system, which runs 20, almost 30 kilometers, might be on the Piqua property, and they did a lot of good work with IP surveys, with till sampling, boulder sampling, and developed a story of, yes, we do have this copper and soil anomaly, we do have the boulders in the eastern part, and then we have these two peculiar VTEM-EM conductors in the western part that they're short, but they're unexplained. They're in the vicinity of IP anomalies. And when they put out that announcement early October 6th, they didn't say exactly what they would do, but they said we will test this continuous IP anomaly, and they implied that they would test those conductors to find out what they are. And yet we've heard absolutely nothing since then. Even in their 3-month quarterlies for the period ending November 30th, their 64-page management discussion and analysis document, which was filed on January 28th, has several pages devoted to the Piqua project, describing everything that has been done to generate these targets, but it doesn't even mention that they started a drill program, which is just unbelievable. This company, its website is still trapped in 2015 with projects that were of interest back then. These new projects like Piqua and Elmer, they're not present at all on this website. And they have this boilerplate giant document where they add something when they remember to do it. And how the CEO can fail to remember to include even a footnote as to what was done with the Piqua project, it's just unfathomable. So I would conclude that 4 months after they started this program, and them being too embarrassed or lazy to talk about what the outcome was, I would assume that the outcome was pretty disappointing, that maybe the center of gravity does exist on Gino Roget's Mithril project to the east, and while that center of gravity is inconsequential from an economic copper deposit perspective, it appears to be that absolutely nothing of interest worth reporting was found on the Piqua project. So I would suggest we can pretty much write this off. Now, last year was SOQUEM is the farm-in partner on 3 of the the 3 northern projects, the Nunavik projects in the far northern region of Quebec. They did a deal in early 2019 that allows SOQUEM to earn 50% by spending $16 million over 4 years, of which $8 million were firm, and they did spend $4 million in 2019 on target development, and it was going to be interesting because they had $4 million earmarked primarily for target drilling in 2020. But thanks to the travel ban that Quebec instituted on the northern part of Quebec, which wasn't lifted until August, nothing got done at all last year. So SOQUEM will hopefully be able to go back in there in 2021 and do those drilling on those northern targets, which are sort of blue sky, going after big giant systems. It's going to have to be very big up there. And if they do find something there, invest for 50%, they can go up to 60% by spending another $8 million on the project that happens to have it and deliver a PEA. But as for Azimuth itself, its focus is now back on the Elmer project. They just announced that they started a 15,000 meter drill program in the vicinity of the Patwan area. This was a big disappointment last year. At one point, the stock hit over $3 in anticipation of the Patwan zone blossoming into one of multiple high-grade systems within a 7-kilometer shear structure. The first 7 holes were released in January. They have very good grades. They had a good depositional model, and it's kind of similar to what we're seeing with Endurance Gold's Reliance project, where we have this general shear structure, and then we have these dilation zones within it where the fluids came up and deposited themselves. But all the drilling that they did subsequent to those initial 7 holes, they didn't get much better than those first holes. And it turns out that the Patwan itself is best where it outcrops. It pinches away both to the northeast and to the southwest. But the biggest disappointment was the hope that the sulfides are connected to the gold. And so they had done IP surveys over Patwan. Yes, it showed up nicely as an IP anomaly, and they did it over a broader area, and it came up with a half dozen additional IP anomalies that we hoped would become similar tensile-like dilation zones, such as Patwan had turned out to be. But all those other 55 holes that they drilled really did not come up with anything, and the idea that the sulfides are associated with gold appears to have been just coincidence in the Patwan prospect itself. The company did do field work during the summer with till sampling and identified several cluster areas of gold and till anomalies. It's doing additional IP surveys to extend it to include the entire inferred 7-kilometer shear structure, and they will most likely get good results chasing the Patwan zone down plunge deeper and develop some sort of breccia body, pipe-like body, which is similar to what is possible on Endurance's Reliance project. But as for getting lucky on some of these other targets, right now I would say show me when you found another center of gravity within your Elmer shear structure that looks like Patwan. Show us that you finally got the key to finding where there are multiple versions of Patwan. And the project right now has, company has 75 million or so shares fully diluted. The valuations around $1.2 is $77 million. That's more than 3 times what the value is for Endurance Gold Reliance. Yes, Azimut has $7 million plus working capital as of the end of November and doesn't have to do any more financings in order to aggressively pursue this project. But given its history of disclosures, of not bothering to update its website, to not bother and inform the public as to what did or didn't happen with an exploration program that a lot of shareholders were paying attention to, that's just unacceptable. And I would swap out Azimut shares right now to buy the Endurance Reliance. If I owned any Azimut, I don't. I do own Endurance. But Endurance, at least, is run by people who take seriously the obligation to keep their audiences updated and fully informed about what is going on. I have to concede that Azimut does do a great job with its graphics and that. It does that, but it needs to do it in its website, and it also needs to have a more continuous disclosure strategy telling us what they're trying to accomplish and tell us what was accomplished on a timely basis after it was done.
We'll have more with John Kaiser right after this.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications, patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with John Kaiser. John, SK Mining published the remaining results for its Sib Lulu project in the Golden Triangle. Are they any closer to finding SK Creek 2?
Jim, finding SK Creek 2 will require a lot of drilling in the summer when the Golden Triangle lets people back into its area, when the dozens of feet of snow have melted and you can get your equipment back in there. In this final batch of holes, the five holes that were drilled in the second drill pad in the TV area, about 25 meters northeast of the batch that yielded excellent values last year, they were all sort of so-so. So they did not really make things better. In the Jeff area, which is to the north about 1,800 kilometers, and both of these targets were defined by previous intersections achieved in the 90s by past operators. They did get interesting gold-silver mineralization, but they were never able to, with subsequent holes, put anything together and create a target that could be consistently followed, which is very similar to the sort of situation that Manica Mining had in the 80s and 90s with its Reliance project in the Braylorn district of British Columbia, which is now under option to Endurance Gold. They did not have a real model of where to go to follow up good intersections. But this time around, the SK Mining team on its Sid Lulu project has an excellent team of geologists. John Dedeker is in there leading it. Thomas Monarchy is part of it, and Quentin Henney is also part of it. And they've put to work a very systematic rethink. They're using all the latest technology to input all this data and create 3D models to try and understand what's going on. They did a geophysical survey last year in the area, but because of the fog delays, it was too late for the results to be available to guide any drilling. So this drilling program of 20 holes was basically done in an effort to construct the geology in the surrounding area. Now, the mineralization, it's high-grade gold and silver. Not super thick intervals. These are carbonaceous mudstone units. It's replacement style mineralization. It's the fluid has flowed through the stratigraphy on its way to the exhalative vent on the seafloor. They do not yet know where the equivalent of the contact mudstone that hosts the 21B zone of SK Creek 1 is located. They believe it is to the northeast of the TV and Jeff zones. Part of the work that they'll be doing internally over the next while is to stitch all the geology together and try and see where, with all the folding and that which happened, where will this exhalative horizon be, where the last mudstone in this basin setting was present and had vents that spewed the VMS fluids onto the ocean floor to create a big VMS deposit like the 21B zone itself, and then got paved over by the later basalt flows that pretty much sealed off the cycle of forming these VMS deposits. So what they have could itself end up being worthwhile. Skeena itself is finding that there are several mudstone units beneath its depleted 21B zone, where its focus has been the gold mineralization in the rhyolite unit that sits underneath the 21B zone, and it's starting to find also these enriched gold-silver grades in these mudstone units. But whether it will hang together for Skeena to make a sizable difference for that project up there, we don't know. But what makes SK Mining so interesting, and which is why it's held its sort of $2.50 price, which assigns a $600 million valuation to the 80% portion of the overall SK project. It's based on the fact that there's now 20 kilometers of strike that is clearly prospective for 21B zone type VMS deposits that has not been properly explored. They've got $12 million in the bank, and unfortunately they can't do anything until summer. and there is a private placement done at 90 cents to $1.08, which comes free trading in a couple months, which the market will have to digest. But when they put this all together, do more geophysical surveys, mount a drill program to test these other geophysical targets that emerged in the vicinity of TV and Jeff, then we might start getting a proper discovery in the summer and fall of this year, which delivers to us SK Creek 2. So no, they have not yet had that hole 109 that delivered SK Creek 1 to Calpine and Consolidated Stikine back in the late 80s. But they do have a geological context, a footprint substantially larger than what those juniors had, decades ago. And this thing, I think, will end up being a star at by the end of this year. It was my best performing favorite in 2020, up 900%. I did not continue it as a favorite into 2021 because the valuation at this stage, in the absence of an intersection that clearly signals we have a exhalative VMS system similar to 21B zone, it's not yet in place. And even if you have a 21B zone, the $600 million valuation is way too high at this stage for that type of target, which ultimately would be worth $4.6 billion Canadian, or almost $20 for SK Mining stock. So this will be very interesting to watch over the next few months, and definitely if we get a big market dump for whatever reason in the general market, similar to say the March meltdown that we had last year when the COVID panic suddenly became real, this would definitely be a stock for me to add back onto my favorites list. In contrast, Endurance Gold, which was also a favorite last year, my second strongest performing one with a 600% move. Admittedly, it started at 3 cents and made it to about 12 cents or so. That one I continued as a favorite for 2021 because the upside is still substantial. The market does not yet believe that a winner will be delivered at Reliance, whereas in contrast, the market is already assuming that SK Creek 2 will be delivered by the end of the year.
John, thank you so much for the update.
You're welcome, Jim.
We've been talking with John Kaiser, his website kaiserresearch.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on Discovery Watch are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any manner whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Archived online at HowStreet.com. Discovery Watch is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.